cathartic moment.
Yeah, I figure let's start the recording while we even talk about all the excitement of even anticipating you being here today. Um, it's kind of mind-blowing to me that this is the first time you're doing Trauma Training Tuesday, because I've been doing this for over 5 years now,
Yeah.
and we have known each other for at least 2, 3 decades, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah, and have
like a
collaborated
hero
together
of
on
mine.
stuff and yeah,
Right. And we have so much overlap in the things that we care about and that we're
yeah,
passionate about. You're a social worker. You're a social worker with a deep spirituality.
yeah.
Um, you are a social worker who is always able and willing to go there with the dark stuff that happens in life, the real, like, your people's go-to when really bad things happen. And you're a hero of mine because, like,
Oh,
you've been there yourself.
you're
You
so
have, like,
sweet.
it's like, eh, uh, yes, I am sweet, but but it's you.
Yeah,
Like, I know when bad things happen to me, like, the rally cry for me is to just, like, get out of bed.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
to, like, get
I
to the
feel you.
front of the pack and rally people together and lead them. Like,
Yeah,
it takes a special kind of person to do what you've done, to have the career you've had, to have the influence you've had, to have gone through the things you've gone through. I mean, I remember pretty well some of the like, public attacks you faced,
hmm,
the level of scrutiny you've been through, and and yes, you did it. You just kept getting up with grace, with principle. Um, you you didn't hide from anything. You maintained your integrity, you maintained your values.
yeah.
It's really, like, unheard of, honestly. I can't really think of anyone else who has faced the amount of challenges you've faced and accomplished and achieved what you've achieved, right? It's never lost on me, and I know you are right there with me with the understanding of power and privilege and
Yes.
resource, right? And so we know, like, it's real easy for somebody with a lot of resource and power and privilege to make it to the front.
Hmm.
It's easy. It is that I've the idea of the monopoly game is one of those things you hear in social justice worlds, like, when if one person's starting out their monopoly game with the $1,500 and another person
Yeah.
starting their monopoly game out with 200, maybe
Oh,
maybe the
right.
person with 0 or 200 can make it to the front, but
Hmm.
it's that easy. You're a lot more likely to win the game if you started out with 1,500, right?
Exactly. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
and you're that person that, you did not get all of the, we know, because of your social location, your life experiences. um your space in the front is hard earned, my friend. It
Yeah.
is hard
Thank you.
earned, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us today, to share the wisdom of what you have learned. um you obviously already knew a lot, you've learned a lot, and we're here for it. And like, even though it's a beautiful, like, sunny Sunday, like, middle of the week in July, look at all the people that are here for this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
I
so
really appreciate
glad.
definitely, definitely really appreciate you all. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely excited. I don't know if you want me to just kind of jump right in or, yeah.
I think you can just jump right in. We don't
Yeah.
have a lot of rules here.
All right. Good, good.
People, whatever you can set this space, people,
Yeah.
here, mostly many people have been here before.
Hmm.
Um, if you haven't been here before, it's, welcome. We're really glad you're here. Um, this is a space where we talk about hard things, and we hold each other in that space.
Yeah.
You're welcome to show up however you feel safe doing so. If you need to turn your camera off, that's totally cool with us. I myself, you will not be shocked to hear, have shed a tear here and there, and
Yeah.
can understand that sometimes you don't want to be on screen for that.
Yeah.
Totally,
Definitely.
whatever makes sense for people. And Sarai, it is totally up to you how you want to manage questions. If
Hmm.
you want
Sure.
people to be able to jump in, if you want them to wait
Yeah.
and hold
I
questions.
figured I'd go through some things and then have an opportunity that be open, that people can kind of just ask questions. And I'm pretty open about, responding to the questions. So I figured kind of like what I wanted to do today was, as I was telling Amy previously, that I think there's a lot of things that people saw and knew, and there's so much that happened behind the scenes, and I'm going to try not to shed some tears. And I think that today, giving this space, I appreciate it because I've been saying no to a lot of things just because I've had to really engage in self care and release. But I think one of the reasons I said yes to this, because of the important work and all the work that Amy does, and all of you, but also I think it was going to be really cathartic, I think, for me as well. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to talk about kind of like framing. I'm going to frame the challenges. And in some, I'll go into detail, some not so much because we only have a limited time. I'm going to talk a little bit about the compound burden of being a BIPOC woman in leadership. Um, and then just a little bit very personal about my story. So, as some of you may or may not know, I'm going to go, I served 12 years in public office, and I've been a clinician since 19, none of y'all business, for several decades now. I started working during the time of deinstitutionalization of people with major mental illness and during the HIV and AIDS crisis. And so that really was a really big eye opener for me. I think that part of my identity, I grew up very privileged in the sense that I grew up with very loving parents in a two-parent home. I was the youngest of five, and so they were able to put me through school and so on and so forth. And then seeing, growing up in an area that I got to see some of the challenges, and then being thrown into that very early in my career, in my work, and saw a lot of the disparity, and did a lot of work regarding youth in juvenile, facing juvenile detention. So that really kind of opened my eyes, and really starting to work a little bit with some of the social justice work, and really trying to find myself. So I'm going to focus a little bit about really my time in council. And I think for me, one of the questions was looking, what does it mean to lead while grieving, while hurting and stressed? And it means showing up in positions of responsibility and care, even when your inner world is in complete pain. I'm gonna try not to cry during my whole thing, but I've been being open to being vulnerable, which is a big thing for me because I've always been this, like, strong woman of color. It's carrying the weight of others while your own heart feels so heavy. It's leading through grief, or stress. It requires like this deep emotional resilience, honesty, and really some self-compassion, which sometimes I think I didn't give myself enough grace. I kept pushing even when I was fully depleted. I would push because I felt I had to, because I felt I needed to, because I felt that was expected of me. And anything less, I was already competing, like you said, with less cards than other people. um, it challenges. I really want you to know that what I want to talk about today is really challenging the myth that leaders always have to be quote unquote strong, or composed, and that strength, it takes strength in being vulnerable. And so this kind of myth of what strength is. And I want to invite a new model, one rooted in authenticity. And it took me a lot to be where I am. Vulnerability and really shared humanity, which I think we're just lacking, so badly in this society. It's not about having it all together, but about being present, grounded, and courageous enough to lead while you're still healing, which is such a challenge. Um, this is the ideal, but for me as a BIPOC woman, it wasn't really possible, right, to kind of lead while still healing. I really had to put my healing to the side. There was no space for me. That was a big mistake, but I felt like that's all I could do, to just muster enough strength to get up in the morning. Because Amy, much like you, there were times I just struggled, um, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then, kind of really, I'm going to talk a little bit now about recognizing the toll of personal and collective trauma. So, leading through trauma begins with acknowledgement, its full impact, both and collective, both individual, like personal trauma and the collective trauma. Like, I think a lot of us are experiencing a lot of collective trauma with what we're facing in our society. Personal, trauma comes from loss, burnout, discrimination, or crisis. We can go on and on. While the collective trauma stems from like our shared experience, like systemic racism, community violence, pandemic, or generational injustice, really, and we're seeing it more and more. So for us as BIPOC leaders, these layers often intersect and intensify. And I think that's something that most people don't realize. The toll can really manifest emotionally, physically, and spiritually, showing up as fatigue, hypervigilance, numbness, and constant sense of survival. And I could really tell you honestly and very vulnerably that I experienced these. When I was about just 52, I suffered a minor stroke. And I didn't know that that's what was happening. So I listened to what my doctor sent me to the hospital. I had my left side began to be affected. And when I got there, I mean, I was in shock that like they put me in the trauma and they're coming along. The doctor's like, there's a lot of things going to happen. I need you to just listen. And all of a sudden I have like this whole team and I'm like, holy moly, what's going on? Am I dying here? And they're just bombarding me with questions. And I said, I don't understand. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high blood pressure. I actually have low blood pressure. I don't eat crazy. I've never drank. I don't smoke. All the things that go. And he's asking the questions. And then they ask, what do you do for work? You know, and that was just, so a lot of this and it began, a lot of this that I was holding together began to really manifest in my body. I am slim, but there's times that I would look very, very thin because it would affect my sleep and my eating. I could go days with very little food in my system. I created a very kind of queasy stomach. So you're going to see, and this constant sense of survival. I was in constant like flight or fight mode all the time. Um, Recognizing this is so important because it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of the step towards healing. And I had to recognize that sustainability and leading with integrity in the midst of pain. Like I had to lead with this integrity in the midst of pain. Outside of the layers of my life, the trauma I was dealing with, life altering illness, as you'll know, I got diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. Um, and what that meant for me and the trauma that stirred up. And what a lot of people didn't know is that when I was 11 to 12 years old, my mother was diagnosed with cancer and she died when I was young. And so and my favorite aunt, her mom, my grandmother. So I lived with this monster all of my life. I had to start mammograms when I was very young. So cancer was like the boogeyman under the bed, that I feared, and they wanted me to do the BRCA, and I just could never bring myself to do it. And anytime that came up, cancer had been such a huge part of my life. And then to top it all off, I remember that after my mother passed away, my husband now got me this dog to kind of cheer me up, and I love my dog. And like a few years into having my dog died of cancer, unexpected, this like rageous tumor. And so and then like while I was in office, I lost my brother-in-law to cancer. So it'd always been this kind of like evil, and I could go on and on. So when I got diagnosed, it was like the boogeyman finally caught up with me, right, kind of thing. So not only was the cancer an issue, and it was a rare form of cancer, so it's not like there's all this like information or whatever. So um that in itself, and having to navigate my biggest trauma was, how was I going to tell my children? Because I knew what that felt like. And I struggled with keeping it a secret from the community. So the day that I got diagnosed unexpectedly, and but I had a council meeting. The day that I had a biopsy that was so painful, I had a council meeting. So it was just people, and I couldn't tell anyone because I didn't want my children to know until I knew all the facts, because I knew what that felt like. So what a lot of people knew was that I had cancer, but they didn't know the dynamics of all that I was dealing with. That wasn't just the cancer. That was kind of the least of it, if that makes any sense, right? The immense losses that I faced. I lost my father and my son on the same year, after, in the middle of the pandemic. And there was, I had major losses in my life, but none greater than losing my son on Christmas Day as he took a walk and was hit on a road. So navigating all of this while still having the responsibility that I had was like the perfect storm, right? For burnout. And the trauma to start manifesting in my body, as I was not really allowed to have it in an open, especially as a BIPOC woman in office. The challenges were real, and what we see today is not new. What we see today, and what some of the people that are standing up for what's right, is not new. Many of us have had to face that. I was less open about it at the time, because when I tried to address it internally, I was met with a lot of excuses as to why they couldn't be dealt with, why this couldn't be dealt with, as with the comments, or with the online, or the unions, or whatever have you. Like, it just there was always something. And yes, that is, and yeah, that's terrible, but nothing was really done about it. So I had to just kind of buck it up. I remember that as I was recovering from, because it was a couple months after that I lost my son that I was diagnosed with cancer, I go to a neighborhood meeting, and somebody had the audacity to say, well, you've been like MIA. And I said, I'm sorry, excuse me? Like, MIA? Like, first of all, I'm here, right? Number one, I've been in contact with people doing what I've needed to do. I don't think anybody's ever seen me disappear. And I said, I don't know, while I was recovering from cancer and losing my child, like, this was all in a meeting. Like, this is the kind of stuff. And I had to, and no one said anything to defend me, to support me. I had to do that myself. That's another thing. I had very little defense. Like, I had to always felt like I had to do it myself. So then, looking at the compounded burden of being a BIPOC woman leader, navigating grief and systemic trauma while facing racialized and gender scrutiny was a reality. Living with daily trauma of racial and gender bias hate was a reality. And it was like so often normalized or dismissed. It was just so normalized, and ha ha ha, it's funny. Like, the hypersexualization of Latina women, I had to experience that. I was always supposedly having an affair with somebody, right? Like, there was always the comments. The attack on me, constantly holding me responsible for all the things like gang violence or shootings or homelessness. I remember going to a park and having someone tell me, oh, so like, yeah, this shooting happened, like, like, what do you think you're going to be doing about it? I'm like, none of the 4 shootings that happened in my district. Like, I just didn't. And I was like, why? I said, why am I the only one responsible for this? Like, anything that had to do with anything like that, it was always pegged to me. Like, even people would put an article, well, what's Councilor Rivera doing about this? And I'm like, it's not even happening in my district. Not that it mattered. But it was interesting, yet I never got credit for the urban designs that I worked on. Like, I initiated Complete Streets, the economic development work that I did, and economic equity work and economic development for work improvements, jobs funds. These are just some of what I had spearheaded. The pressure to be resilient, to be strong, right? The strong Black woman, the strong woman of color, even having my my identity come to question. I remember going to a meeting where I was going for an endorsement, and somebody said, well, I have a problem with you. I said, "Well, okay, what is it?" And they said, well, why do you identify with, you see you're a Black woman. And I said, I said, I'm as Black as Halle Berry, right? Like I said, it's Halle Berry. Like I went down the list, and I literally had to show, because of colorism, I had to show pictures of what my husband and what my children look like. And my great, 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 great grandmother was a slave. My great, 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 great grandfather was a slave owner. The fact that my father was very indigenous looking and fair skinned. My grandfather was very indigenous looking and dark skinned. Biological. My mother was lighter skinned, very Black features with coarse hair. And I had to defend that. Like I had to defend that. Even about my identity, having to do that. That I was too white for some people and not Black enough for others. And that was always been a challenge. So, the resilience and being strong, this myth that this became very second nature for me. I knew how to cry in the garage parking of City Hall, then wipe my tears and go to the meeting. That was, I can't tell you how often that occurred, how often I would have to step out and go to the bathroom or step into an office and compose myself, because of something really racist being said and discriminatory towards just not that obviously affected me or my community, and like nothing. And so having to do that, right? So to have little energy, I knew what it was to have little energy from lack of sleep, from not eating well, and still have to muster up the energy because of the need of others, the lack of others stepping up. So the responsibility fell on my shoulders because I had to do it because no one else would. And I had the voice, I had the platform, so I had to use it. The exhaustion of constantly combating stereotype and biases, no matter the education and the titles that I had. It didn't matter how I had to constantly prove myself. An example of this was economic development. I was appointed to economic development when after Joe O'Brien left office, and people were saying, that the mayor did it for just Latino votes, and I remember talking to a reporter who's now helping to run a campaign, interestingly enough, and he was like, "Why do you think you got, do you think you got picked?" For that. And I said, well, anybody who's followed me has followed me and seen all the work I've done regarding small businesses. I have some of the most small business corridors, and I've been very vocal about that and very open in working with the small business corridors. I had a big work regarding SWIP. I revived Southwestern Industrial Park, which had been dormant for over 25 years. Like a lot of the economic development and economic equity stuff that I'd done, no one was taking into account. I had to constantly say it, and how people would take credit for things. I have receipts of things that people going on and on and on about this was done and this was done, and other people talking and other people getting credit. And I popped up the I remember towards the end of my council year, somebody said, "It's unbelievable how you're not getting credit for this." And I pulled up and I had the order that was my order, right? It was my order that pushed this forward. But again, it was interesting how, so I went into economic development because of the Latino vote. And that definitely was not what the mayor did. The mayor actually knew that I had worked on a lot of economic development and felt that I had a lot to contribute. So I'll give credit for that. I'm going to be very open. I think that combating some of the stereotypes and biases, another example was kind of, I didn't play along, right? I didn't play along all the time. So, I didn't play along, or I couldn't be controlled. And one example of that, I went to an endorsement for the AFL-CIO. I think I've ever spoken publicly about this. And to me, that was a formality, because at the time that this was happening, there was no one really on that council outside of Joe O'Brien that had done as much work with unions that I had even prior to being in council. And all of a sudden they asked about the District 2 race, which was open at the time. And I was honest to say that I was supporting 2 Latino candidates, and why that was. I explained, number one, that should have never been a question. No one else was asked that, but I was. And come to find out, when I left, I didn't get the endorsement. but it was because of who I didn't support for District 2. And you had other people who had done zero to no work with unions getting endorsed. And I also had competition, I think, that year too. So it was just really crazy. It was so crazy that my phone was blowing up. I had I had so many people calling me, even like people at state, like calling, this is crazy. What, like, it was so unheard of, but it was a bullying tactic. It was so much so that individual union groups, like the Teamsters, the Steel, like, I will forever be grateful. They saw the work that I had put in, and they decided to endorse me individually, regardless of the collective of the AFL-CIO, which was like so cathartic for me. It was really a beautiful thing that they saw the value of my work and didn't fall into that group. So I really give them a lot of credit, and people like the Carpenters as well, who've been in my corner forever. The time that I was taken out of economic development because it was punishment for not playing along and endorsing a specific incumbent, one of my colleagues, and because I didn't openly endorse one of my colleagues, I was punished. And I remember saying, listen, I get it. You can either be a house Negro or a field Negro. I knew that I was a house Negro, but in the end, I'm nothing. And I'm going to say this very plainly the way I said it. I don't mean to be offensive to anyone, but I said, and I told them, I said, I know that in the end, I'm nothing but a nigger to you all, and walked away. And I held my head up high and then didn't see any of the uproar either, right? Like, I felt like I also didn't have people didn't know the dynamic of that, but it was like, I felt like, for example, there were certain people on economic development that if they would have been taken out, like the chamber, people would have had an uproar about it, but like no one blinked twice at that and what that really was. um the hateful comments, Amy, as you met, like the hateful berating, scrutinizing things like my hair, my clothes, why I wore scarves. I'm always cold, and somebody asked, "Oh, we didn't know if it was because of a religion or not." It was just craziness all the time, like the fact I had to think about. So for BIPOC women in leadership, the weight of grief and trauma is intensified by like the intersecting forces of racism and sexism. Leading in like these roles often means navigating like personal and systemic pain while being subjected to heightened scrutiny, when every action, emotion, or decision is filtered through a racialized and gender biased lens. There's relentless unspoken expectation to endlessly be resilient, to remain composed, to be really strong, to be self-sacrificing. The self-sacrificing was something I had to do all the time. Even when exhausted or in pain, the daily trauma and gender bias is often so minimized, or dismissed, forcing many to like internalize harm while being continued to lead. Like, and that was my reality. On top of this emotional labor of constantly pushing back against harmful stereotypes and being labeled as angry. I mean, there were many times that we're like, oh, maybe it's the way you say it. I'm like, I'm not even having the fit. Like, I've had to like tell people, I'm like, you see that counselor who had a fit get up and like, it was like, oh, I'm waiting for the hot, angry Latina to come out any day now. Like, I had literally colleagues say things like this to me. And I know that it was from a sense of ignorance and not malice, but these are just, being angry, being labeled angry, unqualified, too emotional, not emotional enough. Like, to be honest, this work, often invisible, takes such a deep toll on well-being. And yet, for us as women of color, continue to lead with power, wisdom, and courage, even as we fight to simply just be seen and heard as a whole human being. Really, for me, is taking what I knew as being, as a clinician, but really my faith is what really held me together. Like, it had to hold deep to know my identity in my creator, like my God and my Lord and Savior. For me, that's Jesus Christ. Like, I knew that I was beautifully and wonderfully made. I had to talk myself. There were times I would sit and would just cry on my knees, and knowing that as the Bible talks to me and says, that even the whispers, he hears the whispers of my soul. That sometimes even when I couldn't put into words my pain, the Holy Spirit hears me, hears my soul. And that's what really has led me where I am today. Have I experienced burnout? Yeah, and it's been really challenging. Um, Leading with intersexual identities as a BIPOC woman, as a clinician, as a faith leader has meant really also carrying multiple layers of trauma while still being expected to lead with composure and clarity. And that's just, I'm human, right? Like, I just wanted to say, oh my God, I'm just human. The emotional weight is real. And I think it's just not talked about enough because we're not really permitted to. I felt the pressure to perform strength in moments of deep grief, of rage and anger, I will admit, and fatigue. I've had to lead while mourning, while being misunderstood, and while holding spaces for others who were also hurting. And that was really important. I felt like I needed to hold those spaces for the others that no one was holding those spaces for. I had to lead with my identity as a mother, as I feared every day for my boys of color, letting them go as they grew into men, knowing that I had to live with a fear that was very real for me because of the color of their skin, because of where they were born. I often had to resist being dehumanized or tokenized, and that's the reality. Spoken about, not listened to. I was spoken about, but not listened to all the time, included for optics, but not fully valued. I had to remind myself that I'm not here to represent someone else's idea of diversity. I was here to fulfill of who I was. There had been moments of real doubt and weariness. Times I questioned whether I could just keep showing up. I really did want to quit so many times. But there have also been moments of profound strength. And I wanted to share that too, that when truth telling brought healing. And that was important. When connection broke in isolation, when showing up as my full self made space for others to do the same. So coming in these broken spaces and showing up, let others be able to come in that space. So what carried me through, like I said, was my faith, a faith that held me together for more than anything else. It's been the grounding force that allowed me to move through my rage without becoming consumed by it, because that was big for me. Grief without losing hope, and pain without closing my heart. And so I'm grateful for my partner in life, who was a great support in my family, and most importantly, my God, who held it together, because that was really it, right? The grounding force: rage without becoming consumed by it. This is what we need to do: grief without losing hope, and pain without closing my heart. So I'm open to questions.
That was that was cathartic to be with you in that. And there's so much stuff that you said that I'm sure people will want to respond to. One of the first things that you said that I found so validating was like, I didn't do it. I didn't like, you can't really take care of yourself and keep showing up. I neglected my self-care. Like I
Mhm.
should like I had to sort of like there is I think and you know my friend Bill's here and he was like been there with that. Like we really can get in this place where we are just we get so used to being traumatized that we're just keep on keeping on and we don't ever, you know, it's post-traumatic stress disorder because we can't really tend to those wounds when we're constantly in the battle. Like you
Because
can't
any
really
space,
leave the battle.
yeah, any space I did have, it went towards nurturing my marriage. It went towards nurturing my children. I made sure I did PTO. I did, events in school. I showed up for, I made sure, believe it or not, I cooked every day. I cooked and
Wow.
had sit down meals and had this whole thing, my husband and I, where we wanted to have them healthy meals, and we would sit down, and then I would tell my assistant to say, don't book anything between 2:30 and 5, because I needed to be there while they got home from school. And then we would sit, and then because I'd be gone all evening almost every night. Weekends I'd be out at events. I had to show up because God forbid I didn't show up. So anytime I had, like, I was good about taking vacation. I was always really good about that. But anytime that I had outside of that, I still had to nurture in that identity of making sure that I made space, and that my husband and I made space for each other. I mean, we're 3 years short of being 40 years together.
Wow.
And in making space, making sure my children always felt like they were never second to anything. That was always really important to me.
And it shows in your life. Like I see that. Like I've heard from people in your congregation how much they feel like you show up for them. I only know, like, talk to one of your kids, but he feels like you show up for him. Like you have definitely knocked it out of the park in like really showing up for all of those roles, and it is amazing to see. But also validating. Like, I hate that it comes at a cost,
It does.
but
Yeah, it does.
you're a human being like the rest of us, right? Like, there is a cost. Like, no human can do it all.
Yeah.
And that is heartbreaking and amazing that you have done so much and been through so much. And the heartbreaking pieces too are hearing how the one of the things you said just really stuck with me. Like, they talk about me but they don't listen to me. Like, that is just like, whoa, so um simply put, and so such a deep truth. And I
Mhm.
know Bill has his hand up, and I'll let him talk. And I also my friend Richard had a lot to say, really comparing spiritual sort of knowing and counseling and sort of a more clinical thing. So I'm gonna let Bill go, and then if Richard could actually hop on and share himself, because I won't do it justice to try to represent what he wants to know. And if you get a minute, Sarai, look at your fan base is huge here. There's some amazing people in the audience
I really
here to show
appreciate
up
you
for you
more than you
today.
know. I've been really, just really dealing with the burnout and trying to make that space for myself.
Even in the burnout, people see you. I gotta, like, really sad to hear about the crying in your car before. Like, I could so relate to that, but also so sad to hear about that. And I do hope that you know that people really, really see you and value you. And we are all so much better off because of those, because you did that. You did
I
that.
appreciate
You
that a
took
lot.
that, you really did take one for the team, like, repeatedly. We have all benefited, and I feel so sad saying that we've benefited from your pain,
Hmm.
but we have benefited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But that makes it worth it, too. So I appreciate
Let
it.
me and Sarah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you, Richard.
Yeah, Sarah, you know,
Sarai.
um, I believe in the spiritual. I'm more ecumenical. I mean, I believe in any kind of, belief system, Buddha, Christianity, um, the Prophet Muhammad, uh, the Jewish prophets, etc., and Jesus himself, of course. Which I grew up. The first mark I made in my life, I was like in fourth grade, and I wrote on a piece of paper. The people were doing blacktop in the street, and I wrote on the piece of paper, "I love Jesus," and I put it on the blacktop. It's probably still there. But anyway, one of Franco's opponent, people that disagreed with him, said, well, a lot of people don't believe in the spiritual, and they don't have the spiritual.
Mhm.
So then we have to take a different approach to that. But if we have the spiritual in ourselves, I think that can help our clients or our consulees. You know,
Yeah. I know that for me, I couldn't have done it. It really
yeah,
was for me was knowing that I was on a mission, that I felt like I was called. And so I knew that as he called, and as God called, he would support. And God has been very faithful with me. Is my felt, and knowing my identity was really formed by that as well. Knowing, like, telling myself I'm beautifully and wonderfully made. I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and knowing that having this was really important for me.
and I believe too that the Holy Spirit is around us all the time, and
Hmm.
it's in other people. So those who love us and those that we love, the Holy Spirit can work through them.
Yeah,
So
definitely. I wore
I'm
my
glad
shirt.
that
I wore my shirt that said faith today for that particular reason.
I'm sorry,
I
Sarah.
I said I wore my shirt that said faith today,
Oh, okay.
just for that reason, kind of like, because that was really, I don't think I could have done it, and I think even now, just what I'm going through, kind of just, I'm really in the healing process right now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. I had a stroke a number of years ago too, and I got a stent put in, and I'm still in recovery, and I still work on it.
That's good. I'm glad you're better.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bill,
Hey, Sarai. So good to see you, my friend.
good to see you too.
I don't have a question so much as just there was always an inkling that things like that were going on behind the scenes when you were in office, especially. And I'm sure that that's just a tip of the iceberg, what you shared with us today. And I just want to express how much I think we, most of us, appreciate you for what you did and how long you stuck it out. And just let you know that I see you. I think we see you, and thank you so very much. You weren't even my counselor, but I feel like you were representing me every single day.
Thank
And
you.
just, now that you're not in public office, but still doing the work, really appreciate you, and just thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. It really does. And I know we've done some work together. We've been in the trenches together. So I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And Sarai, I probably should have done much more by means of introduction. And I know many people here know that, you did 12 years, right? On city
Yeah,
council,
12
6
years.
terms, two-year
Yeah.
term.
Yeah, when I left, I was the longest serving District 4 city councilor, and I became the longest serving woman of color in office.
Wow. That is really impressive and that's amazing. People might not know that you founded Worcester Together.
Yeah.
And because if you're not necessarily a member of Worcester Together, you might not know about it because it does feel like it's a little behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And you predated my time there, and I know that it started back Hurricane Maria, was it?
Well, we had gotten together during Hurricane Maria, and then when the pandemic hit, I really felt like the way we handled Hurricane Maria was good, and I wanted to kind of have like a similar model. And I called, I said, listen, I don't know what this means, but we need to figure this out together as a city, because if not, like, we were going to be dealing with this pandemic. Like, who the heck knew how to deal with a pandemic? And I just made calls over the weekend. I was making calls like, what do you think? What do you think? Can we get together? Can we get together? And we did. And we just stuck. And what we're going to call, I said, we're going to say what we are. It's just Worcester Together. And I knew when push comes to shove, we know how to come together and get some things done. And it's actually, I'm really proud of that.
You should be really proud of that. To me, that is such a piece of sort of female leadership,
Yeah.
right? Like, so often, women's ways of leading are like making space to convene and
Yeah.
to bring people together and bridging groups together, and that really is exactly what was called for in that moment. Like, it was so much of that time was about not knowing what to expect, not knowing what was going on, not knowing what this was going to be, and you had the foresight and the relationships to meet that moment with collaboration. And
Yeah.
and it stuck. I mean, it's still going strong. We're meeting on
Yeah.
Thursday, right? We continue to meet because I can't I can't say enough about the value of that space. I feel
Yeah,
like that space continues to be so valuable for our city, and it is a space where everyone really is welcome, and people do show
Yeah.
up there with
Definitely.
social
Yeah.
problems. People
And so
bring
much
social
happens,
problems there.
not just in the meeting, but behind the scenes, because of the relationships that occur, right? Like, there's so much connectivity that's made, which is really important. And I think that's very valuable, definitely.
Yeah, you get to have credit for that. It may be, I thought about that too when you sort of talked about, I've definitely witnessed many times people taking credit for things you did.
Oh yeah, that
like all the
that
time.
that happens so often. I can't even. I remember that there was one time that I was working on something, and then a couple counselors got wind of it, and then they decided to kind of hijack it a little bit. But I already had some stuff in writing and had some stuff in order. And then I had a group that I had been working with call me. They're like, oh, I think they're going to put this forward because I think they're going to try to take this part. And I said, you know what? Let them, because I knew that it was something regarding fair labor and equity. And so if they took this part, when this was a moving issue, and I said, it's going to tie, it's going to, what he doesn't know, it's going to commit him. Because if he says something on this now and he makes it like it's his, down the line, when we need to still vote on this, right, which is really a lot on economic equity, he's going to have no choice. He's going to look like an idiot if he votes against it. So I said, let him take the credit. But there's several people who know who was really behind that, which is, it was like crazy. Like people would be like, it's almost like people stealing your homework. I'm like, yo, we could work together. Like you don't have to be like that. Right. But because honestly, there were some people that they only showboat on Tuesdays and don't really do the work. And I have no qualms with saying that. There's a lot of people that do put in a lot of work, 100%. But there's a lot of people that they showboat. And that was always a problem for me.
Well, and it
Hi,
takes
I have a question.
leadership. Okay, good. Yeah. Jump in,
Thank
Irene.
So I'm sorry, I apologize. My camera isn't working, but first of all, I just want to say, Sarai, this was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm originally from New York, so I'm just moving here to Worcester, but I'm kind of doing some nonprofit work myself. And just to hear your honesty, it was so refreshing. I had a friend of mine, she had to jump off, but we were both here listening, and you just validated so much of our experiences.
I'm a native New Yorker too, so I still water and I'll come out once in a while.
I love it. I love it. I just, I myself, I'm a faith-based life coach, and have done, just kind of also leading in faith in everything that I do. I just wanted to know, as you've been going through, in your journey, have you ever been in a space where you've lost your faith, and or where you've kind of said, you know what, where you've kind of,
Yeah.
lost that moment,
Yeah. I mean, I think when I lost my mom, I was also really young and didn't have a lot of the experience that I have now. So I felt like when I lost my son, I felt like I could have gone into that hole, and I purposely made sure that I hung on to the very thing that really was sustaining me in life. So I didn't want to repeat the mistake twice. But yeah, I think definitely when I lost my mom, I questioned. And then there were times, while I was in this journey, this particular, did I want to quit? Of course. I was like, that's it, God. Like, I know you've commanded me to do this, but I'll face the consequences of whatever. But I don't want to do this anymore. Right. I was just
right.
I definitely was like Elijah in the cave, or like the Apostle Paul. This was like, is anyone, I remember one time, there was so much that's happened behind the scenes that people don't know. And I remember telling one of my sons, when I'm gone, will you tell my story? Because I felt like there's so much that, like that people would take credit for. And then for me, it was like, I just wanted the work done regardless. And that was very frustrating, but I knew that there was a reason. But I think because I had had that experience very young, that helped me to keep it together during this time.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to mention, leading across differences means being able to connect with others across race, class, gender, and beliefs. And I think that's really important. And it's important to do this and then not lose yourself in the process. So as a BIPOC woman, I've had to learn how to hold my identity with pride, even in spaces that try to diminish or ignore or redefine it. And that's something that people are always trying to do to us. And I think that's really important. It means fighting like the invisibility, not just for myself, but for everyone who's been overlooked, right? Or silenced. Like we know that. I think that's why everybody here does what they do. It's refusing to shrink or code switch to make others more comfortable. right? Because that's like what we feel like we have to do. It's knowing that inclusion isn't just about adding seats at the table, but about transforming the entire room itself. Like we have to be willing to freaking transform the room, kick the tables, you know? Like, yo, I wanted to learn that balance of the wash the feet Jesus to turn the table Jesus, right? Like that was important to me. And I really led to uplift others. That was my goal, especially those that were from like marginalized backgrounds. I led to show that we didn't have to choose between our joy or our justice. Like we should not have to choose between our joy and our justice. And we constantly have to do that, constantly, that we can resist and still rest. That's something really important. We have to learn to do the resisting and then resting, resist and rest. That we can grieve and still create, that we can lead with fire and with tenderness. And I think these are all really important things that I hope you all walk away with today. You know, it's no longer like leading. It for me, leadership is no longer about striving for perfection. It's about showing up with presence and purpose, grounded in really who I am. And I think it's important that we're grounded in who we are, honest about where we are. I've learned to be a little more honest about how I'm feeling, and committed to walking with others towards healing, equity, and transformation. And that's why I chose to be as vulnerable as open and doing this today. Hopefully that you all walk away with some of this as well, knowing that it's okay. So feel free to ask any questions. I'm very open, as you can see. And it's okay if you don't. Go ahead, Kelsey.
Something that came up. Thank you so much for sharing and for your vulnerability today. Like first and foremost, and then thank you for the work, right? As someone that lived in your district, that had the honor of voting for you many times.
Appreciate
Just yeah, right. Like just such a thrill, to be here and be doing some of the aftermath and all of it, because like you said, in the moment, you just keep going. Right. And so now to look back, it's like, if I had to guess, you could have imagined that you were going through some shit, but you didn't know. Right. And but something that really struck me this morning, I was thinking about health, and I was thinking just geographically, I have family members in Tennessee, and how their healthcare access looks different than healthcare access in Massachusetts. And right. And I was like, oh, I have some bias and some stereotypes about that. Like some of it's not true, right? But some of it's right. Like where does the facts live, right? Like I had to tease some of that out. But then I landed on this point, like everything's political, right? Like
100%.
And so then I land on, in this case, you're giving all these great examples. I'm trying to do this work. Oh, now somebody's going to take my idea. Okay, they want the credit for this idea. Okay, right? So even in the beautiful stuff, just the politics behind it all. And in this case, it was a political position, right? It's a government position. But constantly being under attack and navigating some of that was kind of what comes to mind in some of this conversation too, right?
Yeah.
The personal and the political, and how even the personal becomes political because of
I mean, I was in a park listening to music, right? And I had people taking pictures of myself and my husband, and people, like, it just so happens that people that I knew were sitting, oh, look who they're with, look who she's with, look at that. Like, it was just, I was like, oh my God, I'm like, is this guy truly just sitting there taking pictures and then posting and saying all this crazy stuff? Like, I remember one time I came and my husband, we were opening the door. My husband like shoves my kids and shoves me through the door. I'm like, bro, what's going on? He's like, get in the house, get in the house. There was a light, like a BB gun light, pointed to my door. Yeah. And so he just, my husband's ex-military, just went into kind of that fight mode. And those are all things like, or the fact that like my kids, there was some of my kids that couldn't get a job here because of me, right? Like couldn't get into a job in the school system, even though he had 3 degrees, spoke multiple languages, one even from an Ivy League. And then you were saying you were recruiting diversity, but it was like, why couldn't he get a job? And you had people from other states driving here to Massachusetts to recruit him. People from other countries recruiting him, flying him out so he can be so he can work for them. But I couldn't get him in the school system here because of me. Like, you know, I'm sorry. Like, are you you're hiring diversity? He's homegrown, went to the Worcester Public Schools, has 3 degrees, 1 from Harvard, 2 on on education, 1 on ed policy, and you're telling me that he couldn't get a job anywhere here in this school? Get out of here with that. Yeah. You know, among other things that I won't share because it's their story to share, but like, you know, being scrutinized and attacked. And that's like, that was the hardest for me, which I've said, there's just no way, you know, that you could ever run for elected office here because I will catch a case and be in jail. That's like the mother bear in me. Like, I'm like, wait till I'm gone from this earth, or I'm living in another country or something. But, you know, I'm going to be joining Kelsey up in Antigua. Wait till I'm in Antigua, living in my house in Antigua, you know, and then do what you're going to do. But I'll catch a case. No. I'll be locked up. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got a chance to look through the chat, but if you did get a chance to look through the chat, many people here were expressing their appreciation and
Oh, thank you.
their resonance with your story. You know, women of color easily can relate. People of
Yeah.
faith relate. So much of what you said, I feel like is women's experience, and especially women of color's experience, the not giving credit, and also held to a level of scrutiny that other people aren't held to, criticized at a level other people aren't criticized at. And it really is miraculous the level of things that you were able to achieve. Would you do it again? Would you, I mean, now that you kind of have had a little bit of time out of it, and you can, you know, you can see the achievements, the amazing work you did, but also the toll it took. What I mean, it took
People ask, do you miss
it
it?
with a
No.
price.
People ask, do you miss it? I can't say no quick enough. No. And this is another reason why I never went to higher office. Like, I did have the opportunity. I had the opportunity to run for
I'm
state.
sure.
I did have
You're
the
amazing.
opportunity for Senate. I had people calling me from Boston. I had like,
You
I
still
had,
could.
I had
There's no reason why you wouldn't get. I mean, you are a talented politician.
but my goal, like, I really felt like I was called, and if I had to be convinced and I wasn't convicted, like, I really believed in the local politics, and I didn't have political ambition. I really did this for my community. It wasn't for self. And I think people were wondering why I left when I left, because I had already gained political leverage. I had political capital. But it was time. It was a season, and I really felt it was time to let others come in. I think if you pave a way, what do you pave a way for? If you're going to keep walking on the same roads you pave so others can come. You want that. You want others, and I have a sense of pride, and I am very proud to see some people that I mentored very young that have achieved what they've achieved, and I'm proud of that. And you hope that they grow to higher. That doesn't take away from you ever, and that's why I feel like I never felt the need to compete, even on the council. Like, let them take whatever credit. I remember calling a colleague that had an order I signed on, and this particular colleague and I did not ever see eye to eye, didn't really get along. And I got called by the reporters on something, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna tell you something. I signed on, but I'd like to believe, can I do the Spanish and have her do the English? And I called her, and I thought she was gonna fall on her behind when I called her on it. And I said, no, you know, you did put the initial order and I signed on. So why don't you do the English? I'll do the Spanish. And, you know, that's like and I think I tried to model that for other people, because to me, that was never to my identity. I was identified, for me, again, it goes back to my faith on who I was identified for. And so I think, if anything, to know that for all of you, like, it's a call for courageous compassion, right? Courageous compassion. It's like, I know that this would resonate with so many people, and I wanted to be able to show that it's okay. Like, it's okay to feel this way and have this space. It's leading not despite the pain, but with it and through it. And encouragement for us as women and women of color is to claim their space, claim your space and redefine leadership. Claim your space and redefine leadership. And I want us to have a collective reminder that you don't have to be healed to lead. I think that's important to know. You don't have to be healed to lead. You just have to be honest, grounded, and in your community, right? And it's important for us to know who our people are. Like, you have your circle and hold on to that. And I think that's really important. And, you know, we're called to be courageous, compassion, have courageous compassion. And that will always push us.
Let's see, it looks like you might be talking, but you're on mute, so I don't
Oh,
know.
sorry. I was repeating that courageous compassion, right? And just
Yeah.
all the examples you've shared and how to integrate that and how do we do that on a day-to-day basis. And
Yeah.
it gives me a lot of thought about what does that look like, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. And how can I show up that way? Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. And even like knowing here, like, you know, just before coming on here, I get a call that someone from my church was picked up by ICE. No, wrong place, wrong time. They went to pick someone up to give them a ride to work. And that person had a warrant. This person, and the officer told them, he didn't even have an order against him. He was in the process, had paperwork. He goes, sorry, brother, you're wrong place, wrong time. And they took him. So now I have to figure it out. His poor wife and kids, like, they're just trying to figure that out. So it just all happened as he went to go give somebody a ride. And I'm just heartbroken by that, right? And still showing up for this because this is important for us as a community.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah.
How can you talk about that a little bit? Maybe just the sort of, it's really interesting to me, the intersection of politics, social work, faith community. Like you, I mean, you talked about the intersections of identity, but you're also at intersections of sort of communities. And
Definitely. And I think all those hots combined is what helped me have a different like view and perspective on things from an angle that I think most people wouldn't. Because they're either in one space or another, in a couple space and
right.
another. And I think that was really important, you know. And I think it's definitely was a benefit for me, you know, and really helped quite a bit. And even as a faith leader, how many times like were we scrutinized about the church, or I had people like, I had to put in a security protocol at my church because I would have people just unexpectedly show up to take pictures and then put them online and say whatever. And I couldn't afford to have people in my congregation affected. It was ridiculous. But I think that the multi hats really did help me understand the many aspects, and then using your position of power and privilege, like figuring out where you intersect and have that position of power and privilege to help and move, you know, to build those relationships that you can make those calls. And that's what we've had to do this morning, like figure out like, where is this gentleman now, like, you know. And it's like, no, I mean, even the officer told him, like, you don't even have a warrant. But when they checked it, he didn't have documentation. I'm like, but he's in the process. Like, now we think he's in Plymouth somewhere in a detention. So we have to figure that out. And again, right, courageous compassion, just trying to plug it up.
Well,
Yeah.
and you know, you have continually used your platform to help everyone. So are there ways that people here can support you? What are things you're doing that we can support you, or ways that we can support efforts that you're making in community?
Yeah, I think a lot of people continuing to support the immigrant community, I think is really important that we continue to speak up. You know, I have a blue passport. I've always been an American citizen, a multi-generation of American citizens in my family. I've never had to deal with that, but that doesn't take away from others that are. And so you know, I would ask us to use our power and privilege to continue to fight and advocate for that 100%. you know, I have had the privilege at After Council doing what I love to do too, which myself and I joined Adriana Vaccaro as a collaborating partner with Culture Redesign. So um, we teach in different corporations and companies and organizations on diversity, equity, and inclusion, belonging, leadership, inclusive leadership. So if your company or organization is looking to do some work, please hit us up at Culture Redesign. We're both women-led, BIPOC-owned business, and really proud of the work that we're doing. And I'm really excited to have someone like Aviana, who's absolutely amazing and wonderful. And anything HR related, that's your gal right there, not me, that's her. And we just really blend because we have our strength and our weaknesses, and we complement each other. And so she's definitely a rock star in my eyes. And so hit her up 100%. And then eventually, I've had to have some delay. I was hoping to open now this summer, but I've had some delay in Zach's house, is the house that I'm opening in my son's honor. Thank you for putting up the Culture Redesign, and see our Facebook page and our Instagram, because we have a whole
We'll
bunch
put that all on our webpage
Yeah,
as
that'd
well.
be great.
With the recording of this, we'll put
Yeah.
all the links so people can find you, because I'm guessing people will want to find you.
Yeah, no, I definitely I love, going out and speaking. I actually created, because of this, I created a series on wellness, and the importance of wellness in organizations and companies, corporations, and the wellness of I've been doing wellness for especially caregivers, people who are in the field of social work, you know, recovery, all of that, like in any of the helping field. Like, we tend to really just help others, but very rarely help ourselves. But why it's important for organizations to really be focused on wellness, so we don't see the mass exodus that we've been seeing in the helping profession, which is really challenging. So I've been really proud to create that curriculum and do some of that work. So if your organization's looking at that, it'd be great to do that. And then eventually I'll be opening Zach's house. I'm a little hesitant with the climate that we have right now. And so you'll hear more about it as you follow me on social media. I'll be putting up and be furnishing the rooms and things like that. But Zach's house is kind of a home environment. It's kind of like if it was a rooming house, but it's actually what's called co-living spaces. And we're going to focus on having space where young men that were once upon a time refugee or asylum seekers looking to become independent and look for a place to live. It's like a family style. So they rent a room, and then they have supportive services. Like, we'll be kind of like house parents, and they can learn about financial literacy if they want. They can, we'll learn to do meals. I'll connect to resources, make sure that they're doing health. We become kind of like house parents to folks. So they don't have to, but as they come, they're not faced alone. As you know, many of these young men are on their own. They came as unaccompanied refugee minors or unaccompanied asylum. So giving them that space. And it's kind of a family thing where my sons will also kind of help be mentors to the young men, because they have lived experience. So stay tuned for that as well.
That sort of leads me to ask another question. We actually have a few really amazing men in our audience here today. Do you have any thoughts about how men can show up for women in positions like yours? Like, as you said, and I've, watching city council now, I see my friend Attell pretty continually being put out there and being harassed and victimized in a way that men just aren't.
Yeah.
What is the role for men in kind of calling this out or stopping it, or is there one?
Just like we use our position of power and privilege, think about your, position of power and privilege, and continue to speak out, right? That toxicity is really important. I have to say, I'm really grateful for the men in my life that really stood up for that, right? Like, I have a husband who believes in strong women, even though he was raised in a patriarchal environment. Like, he finds that, like, and even my children and men that are around, and men that are supportive of me around. And then, I'll never forget, like, just talk about race. I'll never forget Rick Rushton, who the very beginning of Black Lives Matter, not now, like I'm talking about way at the beginning when nobody even wanted to talk about it. And there was a stupid resolution that was coming out, long story, but to make a long story short, like I knew I couldn't vote for that resolution because it was really a slap in the face to communities of color, even though that's not how it was worded, but you kind of knew the underline to that. And I had no idea. So I thought I was just alone in that whole situation. And he stood up. He's used his position of power and privilege. I'll never, ever forget that. And there were people like Joe Bryan that also like used that space to stand up, you know. And believe it or not, there was many times like people like Phil Paul Berry, you know, people say you either love him or you hate him, but I ended up building a really good relationship. And there were times that he used, you know, in ways that he can say, and I know that I know Joe, the mayor, and I have had our ups and downs. But I also know that there's been spaces that I haven't been in that I know that he may not have stood up all the time, but there were times I know he did stand up as well. And I think that I'd rather take what people did, and maybe they didn't do enough, or maybe they didn't do all that they could do, but I think a lot of them are learning to, and it's not something that they were really ever pushed to do. And I think probably I was the first kind of woman of color to say, hey, you all need to do this, right? And so it wasn't, you know, there was like glimpses here and there. And so I think for you men, putting that forward and knowing that you may not know how to do it. And I know that a lot of it comes out of ignorance and not malice. But even like showing up today, hearing this is going to open your eyes. Hearing other people talk, ask questions, that curiosity part of inclusivity, curious, ask questions like, what does that mean? How does that feel? Because we don't know, right? Just like us, we have to put ourselves in different positions as we look at what other people go through. And just continue to be curious and ask the questions and use your position of power and privilege. Never waste it. If you have a moment, like come against any toxicity and any bias and any race and any hate. It's something we all could do. That was a good question. Definitely.
We still have some of Sarai's time, so if there's anyone in the audience, go ahead, Kelsey.
Sorry, Amy, I'm jumping in again.
That's okay.
Thank you for that thoughtful response and really recognizing, you know, when folks show up and giving the credit, even when you're not getting the credit back yourself, right? And just seeing how that living the values and creating the circle we want to see, right? We want to see the folks doing the work get the credit, but anybody that knows you and has been in community with you knows you do the work. They know you show up, right? Nobody can take that from you. I wanted to go back to something you said about Zach's house, and I had goosebumps, right? Just hearing the space, hearing you describe it, like just, and it reminds me of something Amy always says, which is healing happens in communities, right? And being intentional about those communities and just a kind of like a reminder to anyone, you know, folks are saying, how can I help? How can I support? What can I do? Anytime that we're engaging in community, creating community, supporting, showing up for our community, whatever that looks like, we're doing it, right? Like that's the thing. And you're being intentional about creating this new community, and kudos to you for making that available. Yeah.
So there'll be people and I'll be looking for pillows and blankets eventually. Putting out
Totally.
I'll be needing to furnish some rooms, you know, for some people, move-in baskets, cleaning items, food. Yeah.
I'll be sending coffee from Guatemala before
Yes,
you know
girl,
it.
girl.
Yeah.
Don't get me going. There's a spot there that I get coffee and I sell it here. Yeah, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Auntie was known for it, but yeah, no, definitely. And I remember I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I'll never know like how happy I was when Christian got elected into office. It was like, oh my God, I got a brother, right? Like I get a brother in. And even also Sean Rose. And it's interesting because the three of us couldn't be any more different. But there were many times we also made a pretty conscious effort to stick together. And I know, you know, they've been through it too, even as men of color. And then being able to serve part of my time with Attell and I go way back, like back before I was even in office. So being able to serve, like, you know, I had a friend, I had someone that I had you know, that I had worked with and been in the trenches before. And so to have her in office was like, to really have someone, and I don't call just anyone friend, but to have someone that was a friend that was like-minded, was a relief. And it was good to have him, because we knew we stuck up for each other to the best of our ability, you know, which was nice. And I give them credit for some of them still sticking it out in there. They're still in there paying their dues. Which sucks, but no, they've been done paid their dues, let me tell you. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, because when I first got elected, just to give perspective, I was the only person of color in our entire governmental delegation. So out of 11 council, one of them being mayor, 6 school committee members at the time, 5 state reps, 2 senates, and then Congress, the ones that our whole governmental delegation, I was the only person of color. There was nothing, not even a little,
Wow.
even a little Cherokee, you know, I know that's a joke,
Well,
but
you know, Worcester doesn't have any people of color.
yeah. So when, you know, when I was able to take a picture of like having Chris, when Counselor King, when he came on, and having Sean Rose and having a talk, like it was just such a beautiful thing for me. It was such a beautiful moment, you know, and then seeing people like, you know, take office too. Yeah.
Wow.
And school committee as well, which is nice. Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were the that groundbreak. I mean, I know
Yeah,
you're
I mean, there had been
groundbreaking,
people of
but
color
wow.
before. There had been people of color before, you know, like Ogretta at school committee, which was, my Lord, I don't think I would have survived the first year with Dr. Ogretta, without Dr. Ogretta. She was my saving grace. People like Stacey Luster, who was absolutely amazing, you know, and agree or disagree, Juan Gomez was on it too. For political sides, but they, you know, and also year before as well, like there were people of color at the time that I was elected. There was no one.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, representation really matters when you do not see yourself, when you're the only one. That's really hard.
Yeah, and I'm really proud. Like Vanessa Alvarez, who's in school committee now. She was a teenager working on my very first campaign, and I, or before she could even vote, and then mentored her during college, and then got her to go for her social work. Mentored her during when she was getting her master's. She's an MSW too.
Oh,
And
that's
when this
great.
opportunity of the districts came out, I'm like, girl, you got to run. You can do this. And so I'm very proud to see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's not the only one too. I know that you are always cheerleading,
Yes, yeah,
mentoring, and
mentoring for me and growth of people. It's something that I really like to do, and it's good that I actually have a little trajectory of names of people that I've been able to mentor and where they are, you know, and even superseding what I'm doing, which is amazing. I love seeing that. I love seeing that.
I'm glad that came up too, because I think that's a really important part of leadership that
Yes.
people don't talk about a lot. And I don't remember how you said it, but you said something about like, I'm not paving this road for me to just walk on it. Like,
Exactly.
the point is to
You
bring
want
people
others
along
to
this
walk.
road.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see someone who was in high school is now a top administrator in the school system. Another person who ended up eventually learning how to run a campaign while he was still in college, and then eventually worked for Senator Warren and her campaign, worked for the national campaign and presidential election, and then worked for the governor in her election, and then worked for the governor's office. I'm like, I remember when this kid was like 15, just started work, didn't even have documentation, right? Couldn't vote, and like, look at him now. I'm just really and working as a political advisor and consultant.
I think that is one thing that we do pretty well in Worcester. I know a lot of people, I know a lot of my friends, like I look at what their kids are doing and I'm like, we're doing a good job with our kids, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. We have to know we're paving the way, man. It's for others to be able to go on. Like, you don't want them to stumble on the same. They're gonna have their own trajectory and their own
they're
challenges.
gonna have their own barriers that we never saw coming, but we can at least help them with some of the barriers we know.
Exactly. And some, you know, and somewhere along the way, we've made it just a little easier for them, just a little bit. at least, you know? And I think
You've
that's,
made it more than a little easier for lots of us, Sarai.
yeah, it's funny because my husband and I will see certain things now, and yeah, and I'm thinking myself, and I'm looking through, and I'm like, damn, why nobody calling these people out on it? Because when it was mine, I was like, this happened, this shooting, like I had to resolve every shooting, I had to resolve it, like I remember that I was there. I was at City Hall for something regarding Puerto Rico, I think. And some guy comes up to me. So, what do you think is going to have to do with the homeless? And I said, I'm sorry. Why are you asking me? I said, brother, I retired over a year ago. But I'm gonna tell you right now, that one's the mayor. Those are elected. I was pointing along. I'm like, right there. That's who you want to. I'm like, are you serious? Yeah. I've had people come and ask. I'm like, you didn't know? I'm like, no, I'm bye. Been gone. Yeah, hilarious. I love doing that though. But I can give you the counselor's number. Let me give you the counselor's number.
I'm glad that you can say hilarious, because even when you were saying that about violence, that people would
Yeah,
there be any violence in the city and people would come to you as if by virtue of having brown skin that
I know.
somehow violence is like that's the narrative we've woven about violence.
It's
That it
all
isn't about oppression and injustice and that right? Like, come on.
girl. If I would have had a little bit of money for every time somebody did that, Kelsey would be my neighbor. I'd be already retired up in Antigua. We we'd be chilling with coffee, and we'd be chilling up and getting our typical breakfast in the morning with our plátano and tortilla. No, I would have been pretty well off if every time I got a little money for every time somebody said something like that. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
I'm so sorry for white people. I mean, I obviously cannot speak for white people, but I like it is routinely very frustrating to hear the level of just ignorance and stereotyping and nonsense that a politician of color would have to hear from
Yeah.
constituents.
I think one of the hardest things for me was not, you can expect that from white folks, but when it was sometimes people from my own community, my own folk, that held me to a different standard and had all this expectation, but wouldn't call my colleagues out. But any little thing would call me out. Like, oh, what's Councilor Rivera doing? I remember one time somebody said, what's Councilor Rivera doing? I'm like, not my, and I was like, Councilor Rivera's not doing anything. That's not even her district. Can you know the district lines before you decide? And that was like one of my own.
Wow.
Yeah. That was, I think, some of the hardest things. I remember my husband, who saw that more often than not, would say, I'm gonna see what they're gonna do when you're not there anymore. Who they're gonna blame? He'd go on a whole tangent about it. Yeah.
I can recall sitting in a meeting a couple years ago before the pandemic, or maybe during the pandemic, something like that. And everyone's like, well, we need this service. And so it's a human service organization, and they're looking for like where to put it in the city.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm gonna give a quick talk about the not in my backyard folks.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you what we're doing in my district already. Right.
Yeah.
And here's the facts. We have this social service agency, we have this homeless shelter, we have
Yeah.
this organization. And so what's in anybody else's district? What's in your
Yeah.
district? Right? Like,
Exactly.
why are we concentrating it, and why are we afraid to really push the bounds on those district limits? Like, oh, because you had one of the most vulnerable communities, most vulnerable populations,
Mhm.
lowest income rates, all of that stuff, right? Oh no, we're just gonna put it there and there and more,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And nobody talked about some of the challenges that were happening in other districts, right? 2 and in 3 up at Union Hill. Like there was a
Yep.
time like that it wasn't. Like people always thought it means something, like this is one of the safest neighborhoods. You're not gonna get a break-in. The most break-ins were happening in another district. Some of the there was a time that most shootings were happening in another, but it was like all of a sudden everybody just by association, And you'd mentioned Kilby Street, and they say, "What?" I'm like, "Go down Kilby!" Like you're gonna see the perfect combination of people who have own their home, rent homes, subsidized housing, like a community serving organization like the Boys and Girls Club. Like it's a perfect, but like people can't get rid of like, baggage, that people want to put on it, and they obviously by association they wanted to put it on me. Like I remember too, like just the stereotype of people, like that we were doing a panel and they were talking about something regarding poverty, and it just so happens that one of my colleagues, who was a white man, he grew up poor and on food stamps or whatever. At the time, I still, you could tell my age when I call it food stamps and not SNAP. and because I'm remembering that conversation and him saying that, and somebody like redirecting like a question, and I looked at it, I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't answer that. I didn't grow up poor," which I didn't. I did not grow up poor. I grew up in a 2-parent home that at the time, my father worked at a steel mill. He was a bivocational pastor. And, I was the youngest of 5. I was okay. I wasn't rich, but I never needed food. I had what I needed, and I often had my wants too. So I couldn't relate to that. But just simply because I was a woman of color, it was an association that I grew up, poor and got out somehow. They said that to my son.
Wow.
So how did you make it out? He was like, make it out of where? He's like, he was like, I'm 3rd generation graduate, like college student in my family. Like I wasn't even 1st gen. And my children are 3rd generation college educated. But people, yeah.
My mom was a city councilor. How did I make it out of what?
Yeah. My mother was an educated woman. She had a master's degree, and I did, and then eventually, my children. But it's funny how they think, I'm not 1st gen. I didn't. Those are some experiences that I didn't have. But that's assumption, and all those. So of course, all those ills I had to take care of. Karina, you had a question, honey?
Karina. Hi, Karina.
Karina,
Karina.
what's up, girl?
Another Worcester leader.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to speak on that, Sarai, because so me personally, sometimes I don't want to step as a leader, because of the healing part, but also because people are mean, man.
Yeah.
And I have a strong character, and I'm getting older, and I truly don't have time for that drama.
Yeah.
It's just all that BS.
Mm-hmm.
So you did all that, and it's like, I guess there's like a little fear. When people have fear or doubt themselves, it stops them from
Mm-hmm.
doing it. So like you mentioning that, I'm like, I know it doesn't really matter what people think, but I was just like, it resonated with me. And
Yeah.
you've been awesome. I love Worcester, guys. I grew up in Boston, but I got married and I've been here now 19 years, and it is my city. And I ran a young parent hope, like I run my neighborhood stuff. Like I am a leader, but sometimes I want to do more, and it's just like,
Mm-hmm. And it's
but
legit. Like it's legit. The reality that we get scrutinized in a different way, it's legit. Like you have legitimate reasons to feel the way you do. I mean, it's a reality. You will get scrutinized differently. You will get labeled differently. You will get attacked differently. You won't get. I mean, that's the reality. That's there's no sugarcoating that. And that's why I say, like I think, that's why I say, that it's important that we move through rage without letting it consume us, and grief without losing hope, and pain without closing our hearts. I think that's really important, and hold our identity with pride, regardless, like, and even in spaces that try to diminish you, spaces that try to ignore you, and spaces that try to redefine you, because that's what's going to happen. And not only are you fighting the issue, but now you're fighting that as well. Like you're constantly on battle. I don't think it was till after, like I found myself I haven't even testified. The only time I testified, and it was virtually, was after the whole Eureka debacle. But I was called because I did Complete Streets when that was happening. I'm all this other stuff, and I just can't bring myself to do that. And I've had to say no to many things, and I think that's okay, because I'm allowing myself that space to heal right now. Saying no has been really hard for me, especially when I know what I'm capable of doing and having to do, but knowing that I really have to nurture my wounds before moving forward. And, one of the things I said, if I write a book, I want to title it Wounded Warrior, because I had to learn that a warrior is still a warrior, even if they're wounded. It doesn't take away from who they are. I know, Karina, you can identify with that, right? So it's legit. Your feelings are legit. It's reality. And it's a matter of like, do we want to do that?
It's a little sad because, man, I
Yeah.
would love to run for school committee and city council, but I'm like, after seeing any city council just get attacked like in different ways, I'm like, I'm all set.
Yeah.
You know? And you can't please everyone, but it's just like,
Yeah. Yeah. And
unless God tells me to run, then it's like a definite. But I'm like, right now, I'm like, yeah.
yeah. And so there's nothing wrong with what you're doing right now, because don't never deminimize. You don't need to have that title to continue to do the work. And that's why when people say, do you miss it? No, because anything I love to do, I'm still doing. And there's so much, there's even things that I do that nobody even knows that I'm doing behind the scenes. There's still meetings that I have. There's, you know, I think that, so don't minimize what you're doing, because I think it's really important what you're doing right now. And caring enough for your community, a community that, much like mine's, much like where I live, has been very scrutinized, and you stand up for it. And I think that that means a lot. So when the time comes, if the time comes and it is the right time, you'll do it, you'll feel it. And if not, what you're doing now is just as equally as important. And you're making some important changes and differences. So don't think you have to fill that position to do it, because you're already doing it in many ways. So keep going, girl. Thank you, Wendy. You too, girl. Wendy, you had a question? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, you're on mute.
It's just a comment about what Karina was saying. Yeah, so we sometimes it's so hard for us to please everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but something that that is helping me in the past, I'm being in situation where maybe it was a miscommunication, misunderstanding, or somebody dropped the ball, and sometimes people they just assume that you really are doing that with intention, with bad intention. But I think as long as we know who we are and we helping our community in any way, you don't have to be sitting in the city hall
Yes.
in order to help your community, even spread the word, even if somebody's sharing something that is important for the community to know. I think every single day we have the choice to spread the word and also the love, because there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of things that everybody's gonna be against everybody, because
Yes.
we have a different opinions, different party, political parties. But I think at the end of the day, when we know that we love and care about our community, is when we become a better leaders and also a good role model for our kids, because our kids are watching us, and believe it or not, it's our role and our job and our responsibility as a senior leaders to stay positive all the time regarding about if somebody's attacking you or somebody's not your opinion. I think as long as you know who you are and what is your purpose and mission in this world, I think you got it. And I'm so lucky to have you, all of you. Most of you I personally know you, and you guys are amazing leaders. And I can stay all this afternoon talking about how, like you, Sarai, believe it or not, some way you mentoring me, even behind a scene, baby, even if we never get that connection together, but I still just to see the work that you do for me is an inspiration. And I always say one day I want to be like Sarai or Gladys Rodriguez, because you guys are amazing leader, and thank you so much for everything you do in our community.
Oh, I appreciate it. One of the things to think about as Karina was talking is like, the question before us is, how do we become a whole leader in a system that may not support your wholeness? How do you become that whole leader in a system that doesn't support our wholeness? And that's hard, right? Because that means that we have to kind of break ourselves up and not be who we are. And that's why it's so important. Don't let anybody redefine us. That was really hard. And that was the challenge I had, which is why I confronted much rejection, was because I didn't allow them to redefine me. And I'm like, you're not inviting me to this table? I will restructure this entire room and I've been known to do it. Don't play. I'm not, I would say I will love you and I will wash your feet, but I will turn these tables.
I love that you said that. I don't know where I found the quote, but it was something to the effect of the extent to which other people get to tell your story is their power, right? And talk so much about like you're telling your own story, you're not letting them tell the story of Sarai Rivera. Like that's your story to tell, not theirs.
Yeah.
And Wendy, I also love what you said about because I know that's so true for me that people that might barely know me, I might like they don't really even know maybe they know who I am, but I have followed them and watched their career or watched what they've done and seen how they've responded to criticism or seeing them show up when I know they've been through something terrible. And it really means something. It's really
Mhm.
important. And especially when I know they've been like side note, I've been hardcore fangirling for Jim McGovern, knowing that he lost his daughter recently and he continues to show up and fight this evil out there with all the passion he can
Yeah.
muster and
And
never
his wife
let
too,
go
like
of
she's
that.
like the biggest freaking cheerleader and advocate. Like if you see her, and I saw that and I was like, oh my God, I felt that to the core, and
The
also how,
realness of that, the
yeah, and also it was a very
humaness.
public grieving. Like that's another thing that's really hard to do when you can't really grieve privately, right? Because this whole thing, but and I when he was doing this whole speech, like I'm like, oh my God, yeah, same thing. I was like a huge, like, because I understood what that took. I yeah, I remember sending a message just telling him, you're never far from my thoughts and my prayers. Thank you for everything you do.
Right? And I know that like the moments that I know that people that I hold on that pedestal, like that I admire, and when I know that they've had those moments of feeling like they're a mess and they're a shit show
Mhm.
and they're crying before city council, when I'm in those moments, it makes me feel like I'm human. Like, okay, Amy, you're just human too. Like,
Yes.
on even great people who've achieved things that you look up to have been here too, so like it allows me to have more compassion for myself. And
Yeah.
you said that was one of the you felt like that got you through the sort of
Yeah, and I think it's important to give ourselves grace, definitely, and just to encourage, like what Wendy and Karina was saying. When one of the times that I was campaigning, I want to say maybe when maybe my first campaign, I was in a building with elderly, and in one of the floors, somebody asked me, "Do you know do you know someone by this name?" And they said the name, and I said, "Yes, actually, I do." And they said, well, they actually live in this building now, and they would like to see you. And I said, oh, it'd be great. Now, this is a woman who I met in the late 80s, early 90s, who I was a social worker, a community person, and her daughter had been diagnosed with HIV and then had AIDS, and I helped her with her granddaughters as she became a grandmother, having to raise her grandchildren. And also I supported her daughter. And as some of you, I'm going to date myself, know that during that time, people didn't want to touch. We couldn't even get funerals to see. Like, it was just a horrible situation, especially for people of color, and people and LGBT, like trans, like it was just a damn freaking nightmare. Just the lack of compassion. But anyways, so I said, oh, wow, it's been a while. So I go up and I go to see her, and this woman opens the door. She sees me. I haven't seen her in years. She cries. She hugs me, and she says, oh my God, I just want to say thank you. And she's crying. She says, you know how you love my daughter, and you weren't afraid to hug her. And people always thought like they couldn't hug her. And she pointed that out. She goes, you hugged her. You treated her with such respect and dignity. And this happened. No one knew who the heck I was, man. I was a little whippersnapper working in my social work days. Remember that. I get another call from This was before I get another call from a woman who had been in sobriety for a long time and then really struggled with her sobriety. And when I found out she was on the street, I was looking for her. And one day after looking for her, one day I found her, and it was just kind of a lifetime movie moment. And I hugged her, and I get a call one day on Mother's Day, and I said, just wanted to tell you, happy Mother's Day and thank you. I'm in sobriety, I'm actively sober now. And she goes, I just want to thank you. That day that you saw me on the street, I was unbathed, I had been on the street, you didn't care, like the way you hugged me, the way you like came to me, the way you offered to help me. And this was, I was out on the street with my clergy collar and a hoodie, just looking for, working. And she taught me so much. And this was way before, like, these are stories that no one knows. These are all the different, I have so many stories like that so never very minimize what you're doing, because you're impacting community, you're impacting lives in ways that sometimes you don't even see it. I have the privilege of living long enough now that I started my career very young, that I've seen some of the effects. But those are moments that are really, really special to me. I was in Recovery Day as a counselor. I was celebrating Recovery Day as I chaired public health for many years. And I run into this woman, and I think I have her still on videos. We were doing like a post and whatever. And she says, this woman right here, when she was afraid to talk about her addiction. And I was a new social worker at the time. And I knew that, I think I was a little bit advanced in my thinking. I knew that if I reported it, she would probably lose her children, which were her biggest motivator for sobriety. She had her home. She didn't have her TV sold. Her kids are well taken care of. So she should not be penalized for an illness, right? And as you know, they were being penalized for illness. And she says, she had been 25, I think it was like 25 years, 26, something like that, in the 20s, mid to late 20s, sober. She goes, thank you for seeing me and I think I have that on recording. That was such an emotional moment, and I was in counsel, but that happened before I was in counsel, right? So I think that's important for us to know that all of us are planting those seeds, in many ways, even through our own hurt, even through our own discrimination, even through our own pain, even though our own marginalization, like we're still bearing fruit and planting seeds. And that's important, And there are times that sometimes the branch is a little more bare than others, but there'll be another season. And I think seasons come and go. And I think it's important to just hang on to that. But, what you all are doing is amazing.
That was beautiful.
There's the hands.
Does anybody else want to jump in or say anything or ask anything? So much good stuff. We can leave it there, or speak now, forever hold your peace.
I would like to say something. I don't know if, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hands. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Jump on in.
Hi. How are you? Hi, Sarai. This is Carmen Rosado. Hi, Sarai. It's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. I just want to say something to support your statement, being, involved with the community for the last 44 years. I know exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about those stories that you have when people find you on the street. And I have that experience so often, because you're right, you never know when you're saying something, you might be saying maybe just a very short word, but maybe that is the word that person was really expecting or waiting for to plant the seed that you said before. And I have so many people coming to me saying pretty much just positive things about, Miss Rosado, thank you so much. I was a school adjustment counselor for Worcester Public School for 30 years. So everywhere I go, I find my students. And like you said, sometimes I don't even remember them, but they do remember me.
And fighting on educational equity, before anybody's talking about educational equity now, Carmen's been in the trenches for decades.
Thank you.
Been in the trenches and bringing those opportunities. I was privileged to be able to witness her great work throughout the years and learn from her.
Thank you. That's another thing that I was going to say. There's some leaders that are more louder than others, and we also have leaders that are pretty much quiet. Their voice is not as loud as others, but the impact that they make, it's absolutely marvelous. So it doesn't matter
the leader style that you run, you know, and
Yes.
the you is, it doesn't matter. Just, you know, do as much as you can, you know, do the right things, say the right words, support, encourage, empower people. And that's what I do. And I wake up every day. That's exactly what I have in my mind. How am I going to do the best, you know, the best today so I can at least reach one person? And, you know, that positive attitude and the fact that I'm always looking for that opportunity, which is the thing that makes a difference. I'm always looking for opportunities that would allow me to do what I would love to do with my community. That's all I wanted to say. Sarai, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice
And
seeing
even
you.
in her retirement, she's still doing stuff. Stay tuned because she's doing this like back to school with the Latino Education Institute. And so
Coming up soon.
everybody knows, wants to be a sponsor, reach out to Carmen. It's going to be a great opportunity for our community. Wanted to make sure that we did a plug on that, which was good.
Oh, you're too
Thank you,
much.
Carmen,
Thank you.
for continuing to do the work. Somebody put a question, I guess, sent me a question. It says, I appreciate your transparency and openness this afternoon. Can you touch on how your faith has impacted the work you do? That is, say, how had Jesus moved in your life and allowed you to move with patience, love, forgiveness, the fruit of the Spirit with people, even those people who have wronged you? How could you advise other leaders in faith to operate in the community and government? Yeah, that's like such an amazing question. I think for me, my faith definitely was everything. And so I live by what's, you know, we're commanded and commissioned. And the greatest commandment, that all the commandments fall on this, is to love God and love neighbor. So it's a vertical and horizontal view of the cross. And that it was impossible throughout, like what we read in the old and in the new, the prophets, like God, there was always this need of like not going against greed. And anytime that people were oppressed, and the very life of Jesus himself is going against like these structured, these oppressive systemic systems, which is why he was crucified, because he didn't go with the flow. He fought against those systems. And so to me, I wanted to be very Christ-like. I wanted I wanted one thing. I wanted that when I close my eyes at the end of my time here on this earth, and to me, I believe I will be greeted in an afterlife, and that he is able to say, good and faithful servant. You served me in the little, I should put you in the great. You know, you took the little bit, you took the little you had, and you did something with it. And I want to be all used up. I want everything that God deposited in me. As he says, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I want to, everything he deposited in me, I want to be all used up at the end of the day. And as far as forgiveness, yeah, because, you know, I have to say, I'm gonna be really honest. In my life, there's not very many things that I've kind of like went crazy and did, or have like skeletons in my closet. But I will say that I've learned that I could be, in my younger years, could be hot tempered, and you know, you kind of learn to survive. We all know the deal, right? Some people know. I know Karina's smiling because she know, you know, when you have to like maybe feel like you're gonna slap somebody upside the head or not. Anyways, I digress. So for me, that was a huge learning curve. I often had to learn. God helped me to learn to balance, to speak up in love and not hate, to be angry, but to be productive anger, right? To me, the Bible says anger, but do not sin, meaning it's okay to be angry, right? That takes you somewhere, but not to cause hurt with that. I remember one time I had some information that someone gave me about another counselor, and it was very damaging information. And I had papers, and I remember talking to another counselor about it, and they said, why don't you leak it? And I said, I'm not going to do that. And they said, do you think that if that person had what you had, that they would think twice not to do it to you? And I said, yeah, they probably would, but I'm not them. And I never did, even though this person did a lot of harm. I never did. My thing was, I wasn't responsible on how they treated me. I was responsible how I treated others. And at the end of the day, I had to look at myself in the mirror, and I had to me was the very essence. If I serve a God that says God is love, because that's not a characteristic of God. He's loving. He is loving. But the very essence of what I believe is that it says God is love. It's the very essence of who he is. So how can I shame the name if I call myself Christian and then do those things? Have I made mistakes in the process? Yeah. but I try to do better and definitely will not do what other people did. And that was definitely a learning curve for me. I'm gonna be honest. Like now I ain't saying I wasn't tempted with the papers. I wasn't tempted. I was tempted. I just didn't do it, when it was handed to me. And that would allow the other stuff that I could have put out and put people on major blast. But I had to make a decision on what was productive and what was going to be helpful and what was just going to cause harm and chaos. And so harm and chaos wasn't going to help anybody. So I tried to use all my energy to fight the good fight, right? To do the good trouble, to make sure that I was doing what I needed to do and not what was satisfying my ego. Because that would have satisfied ourselves, right? Like that's the reality. Like, damn, there were times I would have been like, and let me tell you, I'm gonna be honest. There was one time that I had a counselor come up to me and said something really horrible about my father and dementia, and used my father's dementia and had collaborated with a family member or whatever. Anyways, and let me tell you, I'm gonna be honest, that at that moment, had he been any closer, if he'd been within like a reach of my punch, he would have gotten it. Thank God that God knows he does not give us a temptation that we will not pass. Not that he doesn't give us what we can't take, because that's not reality. That's not in the Bible. I'm talking about temptations, because that was a temptation. And had he been within my reach, I probably would have had to resign a few years earlier, because I was going to probably have assault charges. But it was really, I mean, if you knew the dynamics of that story, it was pretty bad. And I had to fight really hard not to have hatred come in my heart for that individual that was purposely, actively doing all they can to hurt me and my family. Yeah. So it is a challenge, but thank God for grace and mercy. I say, and thank God that God looks at me with grace and mercy and sees my faults and can forgive me. And learning for me to forgive myself and be honest. I'm honest with my downfalls. And like, I think it's important to know when we have the negative parts of ourselves that we're still working on, and to be okay with that, and to know that we're still a work in progress. Right. And I will be to my last breath. And that's okay. We're a work in progress. I haven't reached perfection, and that's too much pressure to have.
And that's where you started. That's where you started today. You said you were gonna let yourself be vulnerable and raw, and you were gonna accept yourself in all of that, and that you felt like you were ready to put it out there and let other people be with you in that. And I think it's fair to say the consensus is that everything you put out there was pretty beautiful.
Thank you.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. Thank you for having the space today. I appreciate you all very much.
It was, we appreciate, it was a gift to us, 100%.
Thank you.
Really,
Absolutely.
it was an honor to receive what you shared with us.
Thank you so much.
You are the true definition of a leader.
Thank you. I mean, it's been this leaving, these last couple of years of leaving council has been also an experience, because it purposely slowed me down. And as I slowed down, I had no choice but to kind of sit with all of these feelings and really actively work on the healing. And it's been a challenge. I'll tell you, it's been a challenge.
Right? Reflecting is where the work is, right? Like, and this is you doing the work too. When you stop and, like, we all just can go, but when we stop and take a look at, like, what do we make of this?
Yeah.
Right? That's really powerful. And when we can look at it with honesty and love and compassion for ourselves and others, and it's been incredible. You have done incredible work in the face of great odds. And, I'm so glad to have been here witnessing and cheering it on. And so many other people here today. This is only a fraction of the people that are here cheering you on, and who have benefited from your amazing work that you have clearly done in love and kindness and community and collaboration. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And, you know, we still got work to do.
And Karina and Wendy, come on in.
Yeah, definitely.
Plenty of space for you.
Yeah, we still have work together to do. And I appreciate the work that's been done. You know, like I said, I've been in the trenches with several of you, you know, and I'm really proud to see Nate here, who's like a young up and comer man. Don't lose sight of that young man right there. Newly engaged, by the
we
way.
can see his shine.
Yeah, newly engaged, by the way, but he has a heart of gold, and we're gonna see some amazing things come out of this young man.
Beautiful.
Really, really proud of him.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just put in the chat a quick feedback link. We appreciate it at Worcester Acts so that we can keep doing this great work. We have a bunch of fiscal sponsors and grants and contracts and all kinds of pulling money from all different spots so that we can keep doing great work and keep bringing mental health education to community and in community with community because we know that healing happens in community. Right. And so thanks for guiding us through this conversation today, Sarai, and holding space for all of us and letting us, you know, hold you a little bit and pour a little bit back into you. I hope you had a chance to see all the comments and all just the love and support, but also showing us and giving us the example, you know, when Amy and I talk about some days it's hard to get out of bed and what are you going to do? And so this just was exactly the right timing, the right reinforcements, the right messaging, to share hope, right?
Yeah.
And share community. And what I'm taking, one of my takeaways is really, there's not a wrong answer, right? If you're getting back to your core and your values and you're leading with the things that are important to you, you're doing it right. Like, and you shared so many examples of that along the way. I had to make a choice. Do I follow my values or do I go somebody else's path? And people are pushing me in this path. And so just thank you. And that's just, you know, one tiny nugget of over the span of 2 hours here. Huge thank you. And thank you to everyone for being here as well. What a beautiful conversation. I feel lighter in my body as we get ready to leave, right? Like, oh, the heaviness and the weight of how do you lead and what do you do? And someone's like, oh, well, now I have some more tangible things. Thanks. I'll put that in my toolbox. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the vulnerability matters, right?
Yeah.
The conditions weren't perfect. They were less than perfect. So many folks would shy away. And well, we're gonna keep going. And this is the path we're taking.
Yeah, definitely. And I've used all of that, right? I'm pouring into my church and using that for educational purposes and mentoring there. And then, like I said, I've had this opportunity to join with Adriana with Culture Redesign. So hit us up there because that's the kind of work, using all of this and continuing to do trainings and creating these spaces that are inclusive and safe. For people, our goal. And it's been great to be able to go into like companies like manufacturing or banks or nonprofits or like a variety of different spaces and being able to have these conversations that are sometimes so hard, right? For people that don't normally even say that. But it's funny, like I said, what does equity mean? And I forgot that I was talking to a group of bankers and they're like, well, it's like on mortgage. I'm like, oh no, I'm talking about a whole different equity. So being able to but they were like an amazing group, and seeing people also committed to this work when diversity, equity, inclusion is under attack, and belonging. And I think we have to continue to press forward and press our organizations and our communities to continue to make sure that we have inclusive leadership. So I'm really excited. So I think at some point in Trauma Tuesday should include Adriana, and she'll definitely be able to, some of her trauma. She'd be great. I'm going to have to plug her in.
Oh yeah, we would love to have her. She is welcome.
Yeah.
Invitation is extended.
Thank you all so much. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much. This has been beautiful. Thanks again.
Amy will have the recording up within the next 24, 48 hours or so. And we'll put some of the links that Sarai shared today.
Any link you
and
want us to
anything else, Sarai, that you want us to share, just send it right over. We're happy to put it on the page with the recording as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.